Okay, so you probably don't need the whole describe my entire thought process, but I feel the need to. So first and foremost, I'm gonna just do the move before I've had the chance to do all my whole nuggets, but it's okay. So the move I've decided to do was actually what I did for my little action shot that we have on our posters. I still break this in, where we have this kind of coming down, around, and then we can kind of cut from here and go up. Let's see, pretend that looked really good. But yes, so I broke it down into a few different things, into the thirds, I guess. The very first thing I noticed was right here at the beginning, actually, there were a lot of different ways to kind of come down into our little roll thing. And so what I decided to do was, what I wanted to focus on was pelvic stability, upper mobility, and I wrote fluid meltdown in the upper body. We'll get to all of those in just a moment, but basically what I wanted to practice for pelvic stability was pelvic clock. I learned this in Angie's class 3 or 4 years ago, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it for some reason. But basically, let's see, pelvic clock to find, yes. So basically, with my pelvis, let's see, I find a lot of the times when I'm lying on my back, I find it I'm where is my true neutral, and things like that. And so sometimes when I'm laying on my back, I'll just tilt between these, just to kind of get a feel for where the middle is. And then I'll kind of go the other way as well, but that's more awkward for me because I just suck at moving that way, but it's fine. But anyway, that's kind of the idea that I have with pelvic clock, was as though my pelvis were on a clock. I'm going to, I don't know, I guess this is 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, it doesn't matter. And I try to really hit all of the corners. The last few times that I've done the pelvic clock, I have a lot of tension in my neck. The last few times I did a pelvic clock, I have been thinking of my pelvis as a plate or a frisbee, and I'm only touching the very edges of it all the way around. I noticed that I hold a lot of tension right here, kind of gripping. I don't want to say I'm gripping them because I'm not holding them very tight, but I am holding them. And I noticed that right on my right side, kind of getting up in this upper diagonal, is where I start to get very oh shoot, can I reach that far? Am I still holding the integrity of this movement? But yes, it's the pelvic clock. I would probably go one way, very slow, one way the other, and then the other way. Maybe 2 ways. I'm gonna be honest, I would probably do 2 both ways if it's just not living up to the 30 to 40 seconds that I need. But the next thing I wanted to work on, I wanted to do the pelvic clock to find the true neutrality, where my actual center is, and also to practice my medial kinetic chain, because I feel it's a great idea to think about what's going on down here while also thinking about what's going on up here, because these are 2 very different parts of my body, and I know that very often I can think about one part of my body and my attention to other parts of my body will start to kind of fade away. Like I said before, I was holding a lot of tension in my neck because that's so far away from my pelvis. But yes, so I think the pelvic clock is a great idea for getting a lot of information, for training my brain to think of more than one thing at the same time. The second thing I wanted to do for nugget number 1 was diagonal knee reach. Let's see, and this was particularly in interest of keeping my pelvis kind of on the floor. I haven't decided if I want to keep it on the floor and then keep going, but the most important thing for this is keeping the pelvis engaged with the ground. Because what I noticed with my special movement, the little flip thing that I did, I think the very first time I was marking myself doing it, I tilted instead of coming down and keeping my pelvis engaged with the floor. I think that came on camera. But yeah, my left hip came all the way off the ground, or my left hip. Hopefully my left hip's not on the ground, but whatever. Yeah, it came all the way off the ground, and I said, okay, I need to be able to include something in nugget number 1 that encourages my pelvis to stay connected with the ground. I am, of course, keeping in mind the same thing that you said with our personal rituals, the roll down, how I would move my head and like resist moving my upper back until my head couldn't move anymore. I am keeping in mind the idea that I don't have to resist and go as far as I can and then go. I am keeping in mind that I can allow that sort of sequential motion. But yes, so the diagonal knee reach was to encourage keeping my pelvis connected with the ground. Yes. And then the last thing that I wanted to include for nugget number 1 was I wrote upper lower fetal rolls. Let's see. To encourage pelvis to floor, fetal teams. Okay, so yes. So this plays into the idea of I wanted to practice the fluid meltdown with so with the first thing, where I was coming down to my side, I wanted to. I probably should direct my attention over here. I wanted not to tilt. I wanted not to, I guess, like keep this straight and just reach as far as I could and then go. I wanted to, like with roll downs, take my form and like fold it and kind of keep going from there. I tried to do it with my hand because I don't know how like well you can see on camera, but I wanted the kind of like ability to go almost as straight down as possible. And so I really wanted to keep the idea of like a fountain as it comes up and kind of comes straight down. I wanted that like fluid mobility in my upper body. And so what I wanted to practice for my third part of my first nugget was these upper lower fetal rolls. Let's see. Yes. So what I wanted to do was in our little X position, I wanted to be able to fold in. Let's see. I wanted to do upper lower to practice because I have upper mobility here and lower stability. And then right after, I have upper stability, lower mobility. You know what I mean? But yes, so I wanted to practice here, lower into upper, and upper into lower. And it felt very important to me to be able to recognize and identify the moment my pelvis had to leave the ground here, and also, of course, closing, when I was opening, to be able to encourage the melting down of the upper body, and once again, thinking about when the pelvis has to connect with the ground once more. But that is nugget number 1, and all it is just this. That's all that is. Nugget number 1, crazy. Anyway, continuing onward. So nugget number 2, let's see, let me read through it real quick. Let's see. Reach, spiral roll, forward, right, head, tail, head. Yes, okay, so nugget number 2 was actually like from like right here to keep going all the way to like our position once more, before I actually left the ground. But the kind of words that I got there were spiral, medial kinetic chain. There's something kind of like specific about that that I want to go over, and stability mobility. So, of course, I think I've already gone over stability mobility and how that could be applied while I'm like doing this little roll thing here. But with medial kinetic chain in particular, I'll actually do it facing you, kind of. I wrote medial kinetic chain because I couldn't remember at the time what I actually meant, but it was kind of close enough to what I wanted, was the idea of standing on your feet. because like we all know, the next thing is I need to be able to kind of launch off of my right foot pretty soon. So I wanted to be able to practice, hey, this is our feet. This is where they are. This is where they need to be. I need to be able to just kind of lift up pretty easily and quickly. They can't just be like passively relaxing there. I can't stand up from here, you know? But yes. And then I also think spiraling is kind of obvious with what I'm doing in that section. So anyway, I wanted to do, let's see, I wanted to do knee reach again. Have we done that already? Yes. I wanted to do knee reach one more time. Let's see, but this time including the head looking the opposite direction to practice that spinal rotation. This is less, if I'm going to be entirely honest, this is less about me exploring what it means to have spinal rotation and more about giving me a safer environment to rotate my spine. I don't want to immediately be doing all these crazy twists and turns without giving myself, at first, the chance to have a very easeful look to the side, look to the other side. But yes, so that's my first part for nugget number 2. Let's see. And then I wanted to, like I said, that was to give myself a very basic point to rotate my spine, to spiral my spine. So the next thing I wanted to do was kind of like the second level of spinal rotation, kicking it up a little bit of a notch. And so what I wanted to do was actually like I honestly thought that exactly what I'm doing in my final movement was very good. I think it's good to Yes, okay. So with level 2, what I wanted to do was do our little spinal rotatey potato thing. I don't know why I said potato thing. And I wanted to go specifically from head tail to tail head. So I'm gonna kind of blast through it so you kind of have an idea of what it is. But it was head first, then tail up to head. Yes, let's see, look at my notes one more time. Let's see, that was to give myself the chance to really work through that spiral on a more intense level than with diagonal knee reaches looking the opposite directions. Let's see, and then it also gave me the, it would also give me the sequencing that I need to work out in my body for head, tail, head. It would give me the same, it would give me the same chance to sit down, calm down, and say, this is what I can do. This is the order in which, in my body in which it happens. But yes, let's see. And then the third part for nugget number 2, let's see, I have lower undulation to stabilize upper. Yes, of course. So what I wanted to do, I don't know why I called it lower undulation, but I wanted to do a little bit of a bridge. That felt like a good idea. Oh yes, because I wanted to kind of roll through the spine with it, but I wanted to come up and, you know, roll back down through my vertebrae down to, again, where true neutral is. See how I'm building on things I've done in past nuggets. Let's see. I wanted to be able to kind of build through that. One, I wanted to be able to stabilize my upper body in this moment. I wanted to be able to mobilize my lower body, particularly my pelvis, in interest of being able to get it to rise and fall as I need to throughout the combination. Let's see, and I also, once again, wanted to awaken the idea of standing on my feet. This was probably the most important part for me personally, in my opinion. Let's see. And the last thing I wanted to do with nugget number 2 were, how long is the video? 15 minutes. The last thing I wanted to do with nugget number 2 were leg swings with a surprise pelvic bridge. So what I wanted to do were, of course, leg swings, which would be, once again, good at maintaining connection to the ground with my upper body, so stabilizing the upper. Let's see. It would give me the chance to engage in this standing on my feet between each swing of the leg. Let's see. I of course would get another sort of like quicker version of the spirals that I was doing before. Let's see. And most importantly, let's see, is actually standing on my feet and actually testing that by a surprise little lift up here. I don't know. I wrote surprise. I feel like it would be surprising if I were teaching a class and I'd said, hey, now lift your pelvis. But I mean, I guess with me just doing it personally, it can't really surprise me. It's just something I would decide to do, but whatever. So that's nugget number 2. Nugget number 3, let's see, was particularly for the like lift off this side and of course the follow through from that fun little leap jump thing. So the words that I got were body half, grounding, breath, expression, and function. Let's see, for body half, I very much felt a support on this side while there was movement over here, and then support over here while there's sort of movement over here. Let's see, and just to remind you one more time what that is, it was that thing. Anyway, let's see, so yes, so that's where body half came from. Grounding, I really liked the idea of, I actually kind of, if I'm being entirely honest, this is my guilty pleasure with dance. I really love the ground and feeling connected to the ground. And personally, the way I feel most connected with the ground is when I'm pushing into it, which I realize is not great for release technique. That's something I'm working on. But moving on, what I decided to do, so I thought that this like pushing into the ground and sort of like lifting myself up from both my leg and my hand was giving me, made me personally feel rather grounded. I realize that is probably a rather weak argument. Moving on, let's see. I also wrote breath because there is this, for 2 reasons. One, there is that breath moment of being in the air before coming back to the ground. But 2, more importantly, was I think it's very difficult to do that move without breathing. I think it's very important to whoosh, blah, 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 blah. Making that actual whoosh sound that with your breath. But also, you're coming from this like position of being kind of closed to this position of being very open to this position of being closed once more as you go back to roll. Let's see, and then the last thing I wrote was expression versus function. The reason why I wrote this was because I think I'm a very modern dancer. I was told this when I was asked to do a stag leap in like a rotate. I don't know my leaps. But I was told this when I was asked to perform a certain dance move in my high school dance class, where I was told we were doing a jazz number, and they wanted me to do something very present close. But I was told I'm a very modern dancer. When I was able to just naturally suspend it, I was very much like present close. And so I think that depending on, particularly with this last move that you're doing, this like actually getting into the air, depending on how much you wanted to try to suspend it, this could be a great way to practice your own personal expression. Yes. And then I actually do, for something that I'm like warming up with in my nugget, I do have like, you can do it this way if you want to do more jazzy, present close, or you can do it this way if you wanted to do more modern. So my things for nugget number 3, I have lateral shifts in X plank to push and pull with body half. What does that mean, you ask? So it's the idea, I wanted to like I said in that exact bullet point, focus on body half. So in like this plank here, I wanted to take my left half and push out and come back together. And however many times I needed to do that, that felt like a great way to practice explicitly for this. But yes, let's see. My next point for nugget number 3 was crouched back yearn to feel grounded. What does that mean? Crouched back yearn to feel grounded. Oh yes, okay. So my second bullet point for nugget number 3 might not be the best thing, but it caters to the idea of feeling grounded. This is part of. I can't believe I didn't include this in my ritual for our assignment a few weeks ago, but a way that really helps me personally to feel grounded, and I know I won't be able to show this on camera, but I'm typically in this sitting position. One's like flat and kind of more angular, the other one's anyway. And I like to connect my hands fully to the ground. And I have this moment where I can have a very, very rounded spine, and actually that's what it is I like to imagine, particularly like right between my shoulder blades, yearning to the sky. That helps me personally feel very grounded, because naturally, while yearning to the sky, your hands, I haven't figured out exactly why yet, your hands begin to experience this gentle pressing into the ground. And of course, the ground pushes back. Let's see. And I really like doing this. I do this a lot before classes or whenever I'm feeling stressed, because it helps me, the way it helps me feel very connected to the ground is through this very natural, slight pressing into the ground. I am experiencing results throughout my body. So with that slight pressing into the ground, which again, the goal is not for you to take your arms and push the ground. It's for you to touch the ground and yearn up. And what I get from this is I get stretching all the way down my back. Let's see, sometimes down to my tail. Not today, I'm feeling very disconnected from my body. But yeah, moving on. Let's see. And then for my last bullet point for nugget number 3, this video is getting very long. I might have to edit it down, but we'll see what happens. So this is actually something where you asked me a question with my personal ritual, and I answered it very poorly. I did not give the answer to you that I came in prepared with. So in my personal ritual, I did like a little inchworm thing, and you asked why I did that, and I said that the reason was to give myself a chance to be inverted, but also practice some like straightening of the spine at the same time. That was, I'm gonna be entirely honest, made up on the spot because I couldn't remember my true answer, and I didn't want to struggle to produce my true answer and look like I was making it up. So the truth of that was, I wanted to be able to practice, now my upper body is stable while my lower body is mobile. Now my lower body is stable while my upper body is mobile. And I thought, when I choreographed my ritual, I thought that there were better ways for me to practice upper mobility, lower stability, and vice versa. But if I'm being entirely honest, I was just exhausted the day that I choreographed it, and I didn't want to do anything more rigorous than a little inchworm. So that has come back here to practice for this kind of like, for this alignment in the arm and also strength here. So what I wanted were these like rocking, I don't want to call them donkey kicks, but that's what I called them in my notes. But just these chances to be on your hands, or on your feet, to be on your hands, to be on your feet, to be on your hands, to be on your feet. And I think the like higher you can get your hips, the better. But yeah, let's see. And so it's like those rocking donkey kicks that I wanted to include in nugget number 3. And I wrote those, and I wrote to practice structural stacking. That's to say wrist over elbow, over shoulder, and in fact, like I was actually saying, as you get higher and higher, ideally your hips would come over your shoulders. Stacking, crazy. Let's see. And then, like I said, I can distinguish between more jazz and more modern for a feel, for kind of like your little expression moment. And what I did there was I said either you can choose to try to suspend, or you can get up and practice coming down. I think it's very obvious. I'm not the best at jazz, but I'm a lot better at jazz than I am at other styles of dance, and because of that, I feel like that makes sense. But yeah, those were my 3 nuggets, with the explanations of the 3 nuggets that lead up to my one final movement. Make sure I'm still in frame. Our little come down, roll, go. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this almost half-hour video. Oopsie daisies, and have a lovely weekday.